Courage and honor, cousin.
Into the fires of battle, onto the anvil of war.
Hello, and welcome to Warhammer 40k's Grim History from Beyond. I'm Zekthar,
And I'm Yuxin.
and we are the chroniclers of all that was, and all that will be in the 41st millennium. We've seen the rise and fall of many empires, and this month we'll be discussing the Eternal Crusaders, the Black Templars.
That's right, Zekthar, and today we'll be finishing up with the Black Templars.
Quite right, Yuxin. But before we get into all of that, we have some exciting news about the channel.
That's right, Zekthar, on the last Monday of this month,
It would be 428.
we'll be live streaming the Adventures of Bilko's Brigade.
Indeed, we'll be giving tale to the adventures of rogue trader Malachi Bilko's crew on the pirate world of Balratus.
Now, if you missed the live stream, don't worry. We will have an edited version set up on the following Saturday. But let's dig into the Black Templars, shall we?
Absolutely. But first, I have a correction to make about last week's Vox. Now, last week I said the Horus Heresy ended at the end of the 31st millennium. I was wrong. It took place at the beginning of the 31st millennium.
Ah, that would make more sense, especially since the first Black Crusade and Sigismund's death took place in 781.M31, giving a time frame between Sigismund's death and the War of the Beast, 544.M32.
Quite right, brother. Now, later on, we discussed how Bohemond was Sigismund's successor as High Marshal, which very well could be true, but that would have made him 763 years old. Also, I was under the impression that Sigismund died after Alexis Pollux, what with him being almost 1,000 years old, and that wasn't the case either.
Really? You found out the date that Alexis died?
Not exactly. It is recorded, though, that he lived 800 years after the founding of the Crimson Fists. Now, when that took place is not documented, but we do know that the second founding took place sometime during the Great Scouring, right after the Iron Cage.
And that took place when?
Sometime in the early 31st millennium after 014.M31.
Well, that's not very helpful.
Indeed. But let's say that at the earliest, the Iron Cage took place a year after the Siege of Terra in 014.M31, and give Dorn another year to implement his second foundings. That would mean that by 016.M31, the Crimson Fist would have been founded, putting Alexis Pollux's death in 816.M31.
But you don't know for sure.
Yeah, that's true, Yuxin. But even at the earliest of dates, he still would have died after Sigismund because he died at Abaddon's hand in 781.M31. So it is safe to assume that Pollux died at least 33 years after Sigismund did.
Interesting. So it's safe to say that Pollux was the last original chapter master of the Imperial Fist second founding?
That I don't know.
Really? You did all that research to not find out who was the last to die?
Okay, I tried, okay? But only the Fist Exemplar's first chapter master, Arax Dantilian, has records of dying. And good luck finding out who the first chapter master of the Soul Drinkers even was.
Okay. Calm down, brother. I am not the Inquisition. But thank you for finding all that out. It was actually pretty interesting. But since we got that cleared up, let's get into the Black Templars, shall we?
Oh, certainly. Well, I figured we should discuss some of the legendary relics the Black Templars have kept over the millennia. Now, we have discussed the Black Sword and the armor of the Emperor, given to the Emperor's champion, but there are many more relics the Templars have kept that should be noted. For instance, the 3 suits of artificer armor, crafted by the artificers of the Black Templars. Each suit is gilded with detestation of the warp, and said to have the blood of saints layered into the 1,000-folded adamantium of its construction. The armor of the pitiless Crusader and the fearless Crusader remain with the chapter, but one suit, the armor of the remorseless Crusader, was tithed to the Death Watch. Or the Crusader's helm, which has been passed down to champions of the Black Templars for many centuries. Worked into its ancient vox piece is the jawbone of Saint Sabatus the Ancient. a sanctified imperial relic that emboldens the voice of the wearer so that his oratory soars above the clash of battle. The hearts of nearby battle brothers are filled with zealous fire, and none can stand before their fury. In the halls of the ship of the Eternal Crusader, you might find the skull of the Cacodemons, a trophy taken from the period of time known as the Howling. The skull of this wretched Xenos creature still echoes of its monstrous psychic death screams, which can cause immense agony to any psychers within its range. But the relic that I find the most interesting is the Holy Orb of Antioch.
The what?
The Holy Orb of Antioch, Yuxin. It is an individually master-crafted custom grenade, empowered with the holy wrath of the Emperor and filled with sacred unguents that burn the faithless with their purity. A Holy Orb of Antioch is among the rarest weapons sacred to the Black Templar Space Marine chapter, first created several thousand years before by the Tech Marine Antioch of the Black Templars. They are, by any measure, many magnitudes more lethal than the standard grenades available to other chapters amongst the Adeptus Astartes. Consecrated oils and sacred acids are blended with compacted explosives, making each incendiary a personal masterpiece, inscribed with its own damnations, blessing, and high Gothic mandalas. A grenade will kill the righteous and unrighteous alike, but an Antioch orb will ensure the blasphemous burn in agony as they meet their end. These lethal weapons are proof against the impure and wicked servants of the ruinous chaos powers and the demons of the warp.
Yes, and if I recall right, by the passages of Tech Marine Antioch, that once you pull the pin, you must count to 3 before you launch thy holy orb towards thine enemy. No more, no less.
Ironically, Yuxin, I have the literature as to how this grenade came into being. Would you like to hear it?
Of course.
And the Tech Marine Antioch raised thy hand grenade upon on high, saying, O God Emperor, bless this thy hand grenade, that with it thou must blow thy enemies to tiny bits in thy mercy. And the Lord did grin, and the people did feast upon the lambs, and sloths, and carp, and anchovies, and orangutans, and breakfast cereals, and fruit bats, and large chalupas.
Skip a bit, brother.
Right. And the God Emperor spoke, saying, First shalt thou take out the holy pin, then shalt thou count to 3, no more, no less. 3 shall be the number thou shalt count, and the number of the counting shall be 3. 4 shalt not thou count, neither count thou 2, excepting thou proceed to 3. 5 is right out. Once the number 3, being the third number, be reached, then lobbest thy holy hand grenade of Antioch towards thy foe, who, being naughty in thy sight, shalt snuff it.
Amen.
Well, brother, I must add before we continue on that the first victim of this orb was a beast of pure devilcy, a creature so foul, so cruel that no man yet had fought it and lived. Bones of full 50 men lay strewn about its lair. So, until Antioch made his orb, none could vanquish it, and those that tried death awaited with nasty big pointy teeth.
Quite right, Sektar. You speak, of course, of the beast known as the Coney of Kirbanog. But perhaps we could give some clarification on something we talked about last week, the Terran Crusade?
Sure. What do you have in mind?
Well, the first Terran Crusade, we discussed the second one. Was it 1 or 2 parts? It was a 1-part box, right?
If you're referring to the Terran Crusade with Rebute Guilliman, I believe that it was so large we actually split it into 3 parts.
Oh, okay.
We started with the start of the Terran Crusade, and then there was him, anyways, escaping, being captured by, I can't remember, what was the demon's name? It was the demon of Zenj, the Fate Weaver, Karos the Fate Weaver.
Yeah,
and we did that in a section, and then the third one was him fighting Magnus on the backside of the moon.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
but this has absolutely nothing to do with that, right?
No, this is was also referred to as the Terran Crusade, but it took place during the Wars of Apostasy.
Ooh, so like last week when we briefly kind of talked about this, right?
Yeah.
When the Black Templars invaded Terra.
Right.
Oh, okay, yeah. Go for it. Tell us all about that.
Okay, so the Wars of Apostasy, also known as the original Terran Crusade, was a series of battles and military campaigns fought against the forces of the renegade High Lord of Terra, Goj Vandir, during the Age of Apostasy's reign of blood in the 4th century of the 36th millennium by the Emperor of Mankind's loyalists. During this tumultuous period, the Black Templars had concerned themselves little with the affairs of the Imperium, but when Crusade fleets returned to the Segmentum Solar and discovered that their chapter keeps had been destroyed by orbital bombardment, the full extent of Vandir's treachery became apparent.
I take it the Templars were none too pleased at this turn of events.
Indeed,
Uh-huh.
enraged by what they discovered of Vandir's perversion of the Emperor's will,
You
in
don't say.
378.m36, the Black Templars chapter's High Marshal, Tiganandus, declared an imperial crusade to be launched against Vandir on Terra. The Black Templars, together with their progenitors, the Imperial Fists, the Soul Drinkers, the Zealous Firehawks, and elements of the Martian Tech Guard, took the fight to Terra itself and laid siege to Vandir's ecclesiarchal palace. For solar months, the armies of the reforming imperial preacher Sebastian Thor, the Space Marines, and their allies laid siege to the ecclesiarchal palace without managing to breach its formidable defenses. Eventually, a forlorn hope, led by the Emperor's champion Navarre, the Black Templars led a daring last-ditch assault. At the height of the fighting, the chapter banner bearer fell, and all eyes watched as the Black Templars' chapter standard began to slowly sink to the ground. But then Navarre swept the banner up and carried it through the breach in the palace's walls, inspiring his brothers to fight all the harder. After the battle, Chapter Master Lazarian of the Imperial Fist honored Navarre with the title of Captain of the Banner in recognition of his exemplary bravery and courage. With the outer wall breached, the loyal warriors of the Emperor carried the fighting into the inner precincts of the ecclesiarchal palace, a violation of Terra's surface being an armed force that had not happened since the dark days of the Horus Heresy, when the Imperial Fists and Blood Angel legions had stoically held the traitors at bay. The situation was now reversed, but despite the prowess of the Space Marines and their allies, the overall fighting was brutal and ugly. The fighting only came to an end when a centurion of the companions of the Emperor's personal bodyguard, the Adeptus Custodes, made the rare decision to leave the Imperial Palace and intervene in the conflict. He brought Alicia Dominica, the leader of the militant sisterhood known as the Brides of the Emperor, who served as Goj Vandir's own fervently loyal protectors through ancient and secret passageways known only to the Custodes. The Centurion, Dominica, and her bodyguard of 5 female warriors.
Those would be actually the original starting households of the Adeptus Sororitas: Arabella, Catherine, Lucia, Mina, and Sylvana.
Once beyond the Eternity Gate and within the inner palace, Dominica and her retinue was granted an audience before the Golden Throne itself. The Brides of the Emperor was a militant sect of warrior nuns that Goj Vandir had enlisted as his strong arm, equipped with holy bolters and cleansing flamers. And armored in sanctified power armor, the brides were a formidable force to be reckoned with. But it was their faith from which they drew their true power. No one knows what transpired within the Emperor's throne room, but when Dominica emerged, she and a cadre of her most trusted companions marched straight to Vandir's audience chamber, denouncing him as a heretic and a traitor. Dominica then drew her power sword and cleaved his head from his shoulders, ending the wars of apostasy and Vandir's reign of blood in one fell swoop. Sebastian Thor became the newly appointed ecclesiarch, and the renamed Daughters of the Emperor became the militant orders of the Adepta Sororitas, the military arm of the ecclesiarchy and the chamber militant of the newborn Ordo Hereticus, the arm of the Inquisition tasked with preventing another member of the imperial elite from ever again turning the organs of the Imperium against the will of the Emperor. Now, if you want to know more in-depth chronicling of this time in history, feel free to check out my brother's Vox, The Age of Apostasy.
Thank you.
And if you want to know more about the Adeptus Sororitas, we did a whole month on that too.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah. Anywho, the victorious Space Marines departed, their mission complete. It is unknown, however, whether the Black Templars rebuilt the chapter keeps within the Sol system, or whether they moved on immediately. Well, before we get to questions and final thoughts, I believe there's a crusade you wish to speak of?
Indeed. Well, when we talked about the Crusades of the Black Templars, we probably should have mentioned the Taladus Wars. You see, the Taladus Wars was a war of faith fought in the era Indominus between the forces of chaos and the Imperium of Man to defend the shrine world of Benediction and the Taladus system of the Veredus subsector. Though Benediction was the Chaos Force's primary target, all the inhabited worlds of the system faced a large-scale assault led by the Dark Apostle Cor Ferron of the Word Bearers Traitor Legion. The Word Bearers, as always, sought to convert the bulk of humanity to the service and worship of the Chaos Gods. They took great pleasure in furthering this agenda by attacking a world and system that was of such importance to the imperial state religion that they deemed a fraud. The fall of Taladus and Benediction to chaos, and the conversion of its people to the true faith of chaos, were deemed a potentially major milestone in the Word Bearers' plan to throw down the corpse god of the Imperium and claim mankind for the Dark Gods. The war proceeded on three fronts: on Benediction, on the Austro-Military fortress world of Kredask, and in the void surrounding the asteroid belt called the Tears of the Emperor, at the very edge of the system. On Benediction, the Word Bearers forces commanded by Cor Ferron nearly seized control of the Grand Honorificum Cathedral City complex. The Loyalists were saved by an unusual phenomenon that was part of the psychic awakening, when the faith of those gathered in the cathedral summoned forth from the warp the protective spirits of the sacred imperial dead. This supernatural force, later remembered as the Saints' Wall, surrounded the Grand Honorificum in a protective psychic shield and extinguished the grip on reality held by many of the demons making up Cor Ferron's attacking army. This miracle allowed a demi-company of Salamander Astartes to cut the remaining forces of Chaos troops in two and establish a new defensive perimeter for the cathedral complex. On Kradask, the intervention of the Black Templar strike force destroyed the Soul Harvester mobile fortress factory that had left the Imperial defenders at a loss, though the suicidal counter-assault cost the life of Astartes commander Castellan Dremos. In the void, within the tiers of the Imperium, a piratical Night Lord's fleet commanded by the battleship Nightmare of Celix sought to draw an Imperial military and commercial shipping translating into the system from the warp by using captured Imperial astropaths to throw off their navigators' abilities. The Night Lords then took the spoils and reaped with great pleasure the terror of their victims. The arrival of the Vanguard Marines from the White Scar's 10th Brotherhood turned the tables on the heretic Astartes pirates. So, you know, when I think about it, I think you mentioned that this Euxin, when we talked about the White Scars, just this particular part of the Taladus Wars.
Probably.
I think we briefly went over this, but yeah.
Yeah, the White Scars, there wasn't a lot on them because there isn't a lot on the White Scars because that's the way they like it.
But like you said, anyways, the White Scars succeeded in blunting the Night Lord's attack on incoming Imperial shipping, but were unable to annihilate the Chaos raiding force entirely. Though the Imperium has so far managed to blunt the Chaos assault on the Taladus system on every front, the conflict is far from over. And unfortunately, that is all the time I have to talk about it today. But take heart, listeners. This has piqued my interest, and I feel a bonus Fox coming on soon. But, brother, it's been a quick month talking about these Crusaders. But before we leave, I have a couple questions for you.
Likewise. Very well. What's your first question?
Okay, so my first question is, if you were to lead a crusade, brother, Would you want the Black Templars with you, or would you leave them behind?
If it was a chance between either having to leave them or take them, I would take them because they would just go somewhere else then. So you really wouldn't be leaving them behind.
Okay.
They'd be floating off somewhere else. So you wouldn't actually have anybody behind to guard you because they'd be going off wherever.
Oh, okay. It was more of a question of along the lines of, would you take them because of their personality traits and how they conduct crusades? Not we're worried anyways, if we don't take them, they won't watch our rear guard. It was more of, if you're going to go on a crusade, would you take the Black Templars with you along with, or would you rather take a different Astartes chapter?
I'd rather pick a more flexible Astartes chapter.
Okay, like what?
Because, for example, the Black Templars are very, very narrow in what their tactics are. Let's just put it that way. They are like a blunt weapon, basically. We charge in to get close combat.
Okay.
Or we hammer you to death with the armor, and then we run in.
Well, like I said, anyway, so instead of taking them anyways, what would be a more flexible Astartes chapter that you would rather take?
The Space Wolves are at least a little bit more flexible. They also like to be in close melee combat, but they also adhere to doing other things as well.
Okay. So you still want somebody anyways that can pack that punch anyways, like in a melee concept, but you want them to also have the ability to, shoot people from a distance.
Yeah, because one of the specific things about the Black Templars is they really do not like long-range weapons using them, which is kind of narrow-minded. But
yeah, I mean, but it's not like they don't use bolters though. I mean, they still use.
I'm talking about like heavy weapons. Like, for example, a standard squad is Devastator squads. They don't have any of those.
Right, and they don't have librarians either. Yeah. Okay. I probably, it depends on what kind of crusade I was doing. If it was a regular crusade anyways, I probably take the Templars with me. On a couple of reasons. One is that, like you said, anyways, I mean, melee combat, anyways, that's what they love, and they're good at it though too. Too long with me. Now, mind you, anyways, you're taking all those benefits with all the negatives, anyways, to the Black Templars. Like, they're stubborn. You tell them anyways that they need to retreat somewhere anyways, they're never going to do that. There are a bunch of disadvantages of taking them too. But to me anyways,
communication with other groups.
To me anyways, it would make sense anyways to have them there in a pinch. I would love to have them there in a pinch, me personally. But then again, anyways, like if I'm doing a crusade where it requires a lot more, like for instance, stealth and maneuverability, then no, I definitely would not take them.
I would choose, if it's maneuverability, probably the White Scars of stealth.
Yeah, I'd probably some White Scars, Dark Angels. It's kind of the general area I would be going if I had to go along with that. The Death Watch, or at least try to take some of the Death Watch.
Okay, yeah, let's face it. If anything, I'd want to take the Death Watch on.
Right.
Because he's like, oh yeah, what about this? Well, we got those guys.
Right.
Well, we got those guys over there.
Okay. So what's your first question?
Mine would be this one kind of sort of already answered, but how would you use the Black Templars in battle?
I think the same way that anybody else would use them anyways.
Like a mallet?
Pretty much give them orc tactics. There you go. Woo! Darka, darka, darka. I mean, they might as well just say that. Sorry for you Black Templars fans, but I mean, they literally are just they're a hammer that they just smash hard into the enemy. So that's how I would use them. I mean, they're melee fighters. It's what they do. And they're good at it though, too. They are very good at it. So although I will say it has been mentioned a couple of times that Helbrecht is considered like one of the greatest naval commanders in the Adeptus Astartes, which is just, to me anyways, incredibly bizarre because normally, when you're fighting a naval battle, there isn't a whole lot of, hand-to-hand combat in that. It's normally blow up the other ships. So it's kind of interesting.
Well, there you go. That's why. Because you have to learn space tactics. See, in space, you don't really do melee.
Right.
So you have
So
to
how would
learn
you
how to
how
do
would
that.
you use the Black Templars in battle then?
Probably like a mallet.
Like a mallet? Yeah. Okay. Our second question, actually, that I've got anyways, actually came from Nathan T on both actually our podcast and on Tales of Asharaka. And he asks a weird question. Because the Black Templars are more zealous and believing of the Emperor as a god, do they get blessed more? Or do they have a higher chance of getting blessed?
Okay, so the first aspect of this is, does the emperor actually give blessings to begin with?
Right.
That, yeah,
He does, kind of.
kind of.
It's incredibly frustrating for me, anyways, reading about it because it's the exact opposite of what he wanted, anyways, in the 31st millennium. But it's one of the only ways, anyways, that he can kind of help humanity now that he's stuck as the corpse king is
Right.
by using, his abilities through the warp. I mean, I wouldn't really call them blessings, but I mean, is he helping them? Sure. Yeah. I mean, that's how you get saints. And, like we were just talking about, anyways, the spirit wall and stuff like that. So
Right.
it does happen. It seems to happen a lot less than a lot of people think, I guess. But when it comes to the Black Templars, if they get blessed more, if you ask the Black Templar, I think he would wholeheartedly, anyways, say yes, absolutely. We're the God Emperor's chosen Astartes. Of course, we get blessed more than the rest of them. Now, if you ask the Space Wolf, on the other hand, he would just laugh at you and go, "No, they don't get blessed at all. What are you talking about? The God, there is no God Emperor. There is the Emperor or the All Father, but
Yeah.
he's not a god. In fact, anyways, Bjorn keeps saying, anyways, that's how this whole thing got started. So I think, anyways, it's more in the eye of the beholder, I guess. That's the way that I would probably answer this question. How
Yeah,
would you?
because and who he blessed, it doesn't seem to be on who's more believing than another, because I believe, didn't he technically bless a last chancer by the name of Cage? Is that what his name was?
Yeah, now that you mentioned that. Yeah, I think on Armageddon, right? That's why he
And
ended up
let's
living.
face it, a criminal murderer
Right. But who knows?
who
He might have been like,
obviously isn't like the most fervent believer.
oh, you don't know that. He could have been in the middle of all those war murdering those people. He might have been, like praising the God Emperor.
Except for he was mass murdering, and his thought process was, how dare you insult somebody? I will stab you for it.
I'm
So
just remembering, anyways, in the Terran 42's The Dirty Dozen, one of the guys there, anyways, thinks, anyways, that he's following God's will, but he's really just a psychopath.
yeah.
So this, anyways, I could see, anyways, being the exact opposite. This guy isn't a psychopath, but ironically, he is following the God Emperor's will. So that's why he keeps getting blessed. I'd be like
Well, no,
622.
he is a psycho, and yeah.
Anyways. But I hear what you're saying, anyways. The whole aspect of the Emperor will bless people that aren't even faithful to him as the God Emperor, which, quite frankly, if you stop and think about it, makes sense because he never wanted to be worshipped as a god. So
It seems to be, in his case, it's who does he think, at least at the time, needs the most, will be
help.
the most benefit to assist.
So yeah, but so if you're talking about, like you said, anyways, Nathan, if you're talking about, anyways, because they are so fervent, the way I see it, anyways, is that it's kind of more in the eyes of the beholder. They obviously, anyways, anytime anything good happens to them, they're going to call it the Emperor's blessing.
Emperor.
Yes, praise be the Space King. But, but if you talk to somebody else in a different Astartes group that does not believe, anyways, that it's the God Emperor, he was just the Emperor, like the Space Wolves, they would go, no, they don't get more blessings. They just it's combat, So hopefully that answers your question. Moving on though, what's the next one you got for me?
Who do you think that the Black Templars would get along with the best?
So are you asking like Astartes wise,
Yeah, let's just go with the Astartes.
if we're just gonna go with Astartes, okay.
Because anybody else is like, no. Astartes would probably be the closest you get to anybody to begin with.
Well, if you're gonna talk Ostra Militarum, then maybe, I don't know, like the Catechins, because they're not really human either. But if we're talking Astartes, well, it seems like they got along pretty well with the Celestial Lions in Armageddon, even though there isn't a whole lot of them left. They seem to get along fairly well. Well, fairly well is a relative term, but with mostly, anyways, the Imperial Fists and their foundings. When you go outside of that, it kind of gets farther and farther away. They definitely wouldn't get along with any of them that really like psychers. So,
and they don't get along with the salamanders,
right?
Because the salamanders actually like people.
So, yeah,
people.
So the guys that they kind of get along with, I think I answered your question here. The guys they get along with, anyways, are the guys that are Dorn's sons. Those are the guys I think they get along with the best.
Okay.
What do you think?
I think, yeah, more than likely, of course, minus some factions like the Fifth Exemplar weren't very chummy with them, obviously.
Yeah.
And later the Soul Drinkers. The Soul Drinkers are weird.
Well, which chapter of Soul Drinkers are you referring to? Are you referring to the ones that were the Sons of Dorn, or are you referring to the new ones?
Both of them, probably.
Well,
I don't know much about the new one, but the old one, yeah. Technically, the old one could possibly exist still. Just they're in the warp.
Well, we'll have to do a whole month, anyways, on like different second foundings. That would, I think, would be kind of fun. And if we did, anyways, the Soul Drinkers would have to be one we talked about, because they are a very interesting chapter. But moving on. So this is one that I kind of chuckled about when I was thinking about it. If Rogal Dorn returns, what do you think he will do with the Black Templars?
Well, part of me wants to go, well, I'm breaking you up into sub-chapters. Congratulations.
Well, with Dorn, too, it could very well be, if he comes back anyways, he goes, congratulations, you're all Imperial Fist now. We were remaking the Legion. Remember, Dorn wasn't a big fan of breaking everybody up. So,
and then he looks, he's like, oh, wait, Guilliman's still here. Gosh dang it.
He came back and saw the state of the Imperium. I don't think he would care. When Dorn, so I know that everybody's like, well, Dorn's dead. See, we have his arm. Like, no, you just have his arm. He's
his
probably
hand isn't even his arm, it's his hand.
It's his hand. So I think he's going to come back, and when he comes back, we'll be tied to Rabute Guilliman. Because out of all the guys, anyways, that could run the Imperium, Dorn could have done a pretty good job of it too. Him and Guilliman, anyways, up next to each other, but they have different concepts of how it should be run. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
So, and I could see Dorn coming back and going, "This is what you ended up doing with the Imperium. We need the legions back." To me, anyways. I mean, I don't know about you, anyways. I think if he did, anyways, and he said that we need the legions back, he's kind of got a point. I mean, I understand, anyways, that it's like, we don't want the Astartes taking back over again. It's like, true, but everything else is taking over right now. So I'm just thinking, anyways, I would rather have a whole conglomerate of 100,000 Space Marines all marching under the same orders as somebody, as opposed to marching under 100 different chapter masters. Does that make sense?
On the other hand,
what's
like,
the other hand?
From the Rabute Guilliman's Terran Crusade, sometimes they just do it anyways. They just all gather together. Because wasn't it like 20 different successor chapters of the Ultramarines just gathered together? And then like, yeah, we're working together. It's like, you're basically the Legion.
Yeah. Well, that's part of the thing with Guilliman is that when he shows up, he's like, we're going to do this. It's like, isn't that like going exactly the opposite of what you said we needed to do? Maybe. Okay,
But
this is what needs to get
I'm
done.
not breaking my own rules.
Right.
Because we are still separate chapters.
Right. Called loopholes. So, but Dorn, anyways, wouldn't work around the loopholes. He would just go, we're reforming the Legion. I mean, that sounds like something Dorn would do. But so if he showed up anyways and he saw the Black Templars, what do you think he would think of them as a chapter?
I think you would have to try to dial them back a bit because, you know, they have fallen further away from Sigismund's
Right.
ideals. So, and he was the person that Dorn gave him to.
Yeah.
So,
Dorn and Sigismund kind of had their own weird beef. And it seemed like they kind of patched it up by the time he gave him the Black Templars. But it's never really explained. I mean,
yeah.
Dorn goes so far as to say, anyways, you are no longer my son. And the reasoning behind that, by the way, was because Sigismund kept told him anyways, that he believed that the Emperor was in fact a god. So, and that has definitely kept with the Black Templars. Now, mind you, anyways, when he let Sigismund take charge, anyways, he knew, anyways, that's what Sigismund believed. So I don't know, anyways, if he just kind of got over that and going, okay, fine, whatever, kind of thing. Or maybe he was just so despondent about the fact that he thought that he failed on Terra. He's just kind of like, fine, whatever,
I know this guy will be able to do a decent job. So
yeah. But I do think that there was some sort of forgiveness or something, anyways, that took place, anyways, that they kind of saw eye to eye towards the end of the siege of Terra. In fact, it's actually chronicled, and if you would indulge me half a second, brother. My lord. And then, hearing that voice, he remembered. He had already acted. Typical Rogal Dorn. Anticipating his own momentary weakness, he had already put the necessary move in place. He had summoned Sigismund here, to Shard Bastion, to speak to him in person, to give him the command, because he could never falter in front of his son. Not this son. He turned, just for a moment, away from the confusion of the command station and faced him. Sigismund wore the black of the Templar Brethren. He had come up to the command level with others of his order, a dozen, and they all looked as grim as one another, fatalistic, hammered into a kind of permanent, shell-shocked fury. Sigismund's own expression was wary. He had a reason for that. Dorn had run him hard, borne down on him, bathed him in disapproval ever since Estevan. Their reasons had been sound. Neither of them could have expected any less, given the codes of honor that made them who they were, and Sigismund had never complained. But there had always been something else under all that. Not quite a test, but maybe a tempering, like that of the best blades, to see if the steel could withstand the fire, be more hard-wearing for it.
This is the end. All that could have been done has been done. Every delay, every counter-strike, every anticipation. Now they get in. Mercury will fail imminently, an exultant, and then the others.
Sigismund's unwavering expression never flickered. He was a cold one, almost too good an imperial fist. Almost a parody of their entire philosophy.
Faster than we might have hoped. Not as fast as we might have feared. Soon the shape of the battle will change. We will be like dogs in the rubble, scrapping over every habitation. The reserves are ready. You have their coordinates. They have their orders.
Sigismund nodded.
I will return to Bahab. Communications are collapsing, and the sector must remain operational. You, though,
smiled coldly.
I remember your ambition, to be here, whatever the cost.
No reaction, just that unbending devotion to duty. It could be almost scary sometimes, to be in the presence of such a hyper-controlled psyche. Maybe other souls saw much of the same monomania in him, too. But Sigismund Sigismund had always been something else.
It has all come to pass, I suppose. Just as the Remembrancer girl told you it would. Coincidence? I have to believe it.
Did he, though? Clinging too closely to the old rationalist Kant felt pointless now. Even Malkador was beginning to waver, marking the slide back into superstition.
So many wars. So much blood spilt. all to reach the point that she foresaw from the start. I gave you hell for it then. But the new doctrines must give way to the old, it seems. And we can worry about what that means if any of us get out of this alive.
Sigismund just stared back at him, the steel-trap gaze, the same mask he wore when he dueled.
So the discipline is ended, and the leash is off, Dorn told him. March out! Take the wall defenses! Take the reserves and rally them! They will be blind and deaf out there soon, and so we'll need a leader.
Sigismund nodded again. No other soul would have noticed it, but there was something other than the usual dutifulness in his eyes just then. Something like hunger.
Any specific objectives, Lord?
He asked. At that, Dorn almost laughed. Not from humor, just from emptiness. The caustic recognition of what would come next. He had given everything. He was already empty, drained to a husk, and the hardest test still lay ahead. The lion had not come. Guilliman and Russ had not come. They were out of time, out of luck, and what remained now was only defiance. Only bloody-minded, bloody-handed defiance.
No, I set you free, my beloved, my best son,
said Rogal Dorn, never taking his eyes off his first captain.
Do now what you were made to do.
He smiled a second time, the expression as icy as the despair that gripped his heart.
Hurt them.
So, I mean, I don't think he really apologizes there, but it does seem in ways that they do come to a particular aspect of, they become eye to eye a little bit more. But you think anyways that the Black Templar, if he came back, he would try to rein them in a little bit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, definitely on the aspect that he was a defense builder and they are not defending. He's like, whoa. You need to come back here for a sec. We need to take a few things back here.
Take a beat. Yeah. Part of me really honestly thinks, and the more I was thinking about it anyways, wouldn't surprise me in the least if Dorn came back anyways, that he would reform the Imperial Fist or something along those lines and grab all of his sons anyways and put them into one conglomerate. And then anyways, if that was too much of a problem, then redivide them back out again into different chapters that he controlled all of. So very much kind of along the lines of like, okay, fine, I guess anyways, I won't create the Legion, but I'm in charge of all these chapters. They all have chapter masters still, but I'm the one that's in charge.
So it was basically doing what Rogal Dorn did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can see Dorn doing that too. But I could definitely see him anyways disbanding the Black Templars because they're so far away anyways from what his original concept was. But yeah, regardless of if he decided to reintroduce anyways the Imperial Fist Legion, or just on the concept of making them take a step back, the Black Templars take a step back, and that would be kind of an interesting conversation anyways if he ended up talking with Helbrecht. Helbrecht is like, we follow the God Emperor. It's like, he wasn't a god. I mean, Rogal Dorn would be if, ands, and no buts about that. He'd be like, no, he wasn't a god. He was my father. Now, right. As Helbrecht, how are you going to argue that? It's like, I mean, not wanting to split hairs here. It's like, no, there is no splitting hairs. He wasn't a god.
Okay, on the mention of Helbrecht, didn't you get a question from Sir Benderbyden?
Oh, I did. I thought this was kind of an interesting concept. So, Sir Benderbyden, last time, anyways, we did a premiere. He had he mentioned, anyways, that he had kind of a suspicion that perhaps Relics Guilliman has replaced Helbrecht with a puppet clone due to the Primaris Astartes project. Could this be? He also has the belief that Helbrecht escaped Guilliman and is launching a crusade against Guilliman to take his name back and destroy the usurper of the Imperium. So the thought process behind it was, so you mentioned, I believe you mentioned, or maybe I did anyways, when we were talking about Armageddon, how Guilliman showed up to talk to Helbrecht and he introduced the Primaris Space Marines. And Guilliman was worried that Helbrecht would have a problem with them, but it turns out that he really didn't. And he welcomed them into the Black Templars. So Sir Benderbyden's thought process is like, well, It doesn't make any sense for Helbrecht's character. So his thought process is that when Rabute Guilliman was bringing it up, Helbrecht attempted to kill him, wasn't able to do it, but Guilliman wasn't able to kill Helbrecht either. But he ended up making this Primaris clone of Helbrecht so that everybody would fall in line. Helbrecht ends up escaping, on the other hand, taking his trusted advisors with him, and he is slowly building crusade against Guilliman, so he can rightfully take back his place as the Black Templar's head. So what do you think of this interesting thought process?
Well, I think that the first problem with that would be is Primaris Space Marine is generally much bigger.
Right.
So trying to replace the Helbrecht with a Primaris Space Marine would be a little bit hard.
Except for one of the things is that Helbrecht apparently crossed the Rubicon to become a Primaris Space Marine.
Was that before or after this occurred?
It was after the conversation, anyways, he had with Guilliman. In fact, now that I think about it, the only one, anyways, who is a chapter master that has met up with Guilliman who hasn't crossed the Rubicon is Grimnar. Pretty sure Dante did and Azrael did. It's almost, anyways, from all the stuff that we've read, it's almost like this little last note at the very end, anyways. Oh, yeah, and after they met Rabute Guilliman, they became a Primaris Space Marine. Like, oh, really? Ah, well. I think it's an interesting thought process. And very well, anyways, that would be something definitely the Inquisition would try to keep hush-hush, along with Guilliman.
Of course, Guilliman not being able to kill Helbrecht, on the other hand, is also another thing that's debatable.
Yeah,
I mean, that's a
harder
Primarch.
Yeah. Well, I was just thinking of Carrot 42's movie Get Smart, where Steve Carell is like, well, little do you know that I have the element of surprise. And he throws the phone at the bad guy, but it's on that wire, so it gets almost all the way to him, and then it zips back to him, so it doesn't even
like
hit
a
him.
half foot or foot short.
Yeah, I could see, anyways, Helbrecht, anyways, like, I didn't notice. Surprise! Oh, it didn't work. Now we're running.
You forgot. I have this massive armor that's basically indestructible. All right.
Then again, Helbrecht's also sorry, I was going to say chapter master. He's not really a chapter master. He's a, what is it?
High
Not grandmaster. What?
A high marshal.
Yeah, he's a high marshal. They're also incredibly tough to kill.
But
I could see him like
a Primarch.
Yeah, I could see anyway. Well, that's the other thing too is that Helbrecht, I think, would be smart enough to know anyways that he couldn't take Guilliman on in single combat. So he would have to try to be sneaky about it, trying to kill him, which isn't very Black Templar-y. I mean, quite frankly, it would seem to me anyways, Helbrecht's character would very much be like, no, there's no way we're doing this. The Primaris Space Marines, this is against the Emperor's will. I challenge you to a duel. You get about that far, and then poof, you would have gotten clobbered by Guilliman. So,
Of course, on the other hand, one of the reasons why he may have accepted them wholeheartedly is knowing that he couldn't do anything to stop it anyways.
I think it's an interesting path. It makes more sense to me anyways, just on Helbrecht's character, though. He doesn't seem like somebody anyways that would be just totally up for the Primaris project, you know? That's the part anyways, to me anyways, that always kind of threw me for a loop when it came to that. And you know, the funny thing is that, like, for instance, with the Space Wolves and Grimnar anyways, and Grimnar talking to him and going, well, if you want to give us Primaris Space Wolves, we're okay with that, but I'm not going to become a Primaris Space Marine. And most of my guys probably won't do that either, because we don't think anyways that it's the right way to go. But Guilliman was cool. Yeah, because we're old school. and Guilliman was fine with that. So to me anyways, if Helbrecht had gone along the same lines of that, I think Guilliman would have been fine with it, and it would have made more sense for Helbrecht's character, I guess, anyways. Except for Helbrecht's also a stick in the mud. So the concept of him being like, well, we can kind of work around this, I don't see him doing that. if he doesn't believe in something anyways, he's going to stand by whatever he does, which, I mean, I kind of like that about his character, but other times it just drives me nuts.
Yeah, that's
So,
why I would assume that he'd more likely, if he didn't accept it, would have died trying to
right.
stop it, which would sort of prevent the other part of this statement about him having escaped Guilliman.
Well, the way that I could see him actually escaping Guilliman is that Guilliman thought that he killed him, and he really didn't, because he's a tough cookie to kill. So, like, he impales him with the Emperor's sword, right? And then he walks off as it looks like Helbrecht's dying, and then, but Helbrecht was able to crawl to like an escape chute or something like that, and the recycling bin or whatever they call it, you know. He's getting away, you know. Kind of, he pulls a Star Wars, you know. He goes down to the garbage chute. But
Gets away with all the garbage. Yeah.
yeah, you know. So I don't know. I thought it was kind of an interesting philosophy. I could definitely, the way that Sir Bender Biden was talking about, anyways, it seems more like Helbrecht's character, don't you think?
Yeah.
Now, mind you, anyways, like you said, anyways, there are some like shenanigan problems with it, which you could probably explain away with some sort of plot armor, but or MacGuffins or something, anyways. But it looks like there are kind of some problems with it. But like I said, I kind of think, anyways, that character-wise, it makes more sense. But that's just me. What do you think?
I think it's a stretch.
Okay. Well, what's your next question? How many more do you got? By the way, we're starting to run out of time.
I just got one last question.
Okay.
It's what do you think would give the Black Templars enough reason to all gather together? And what I mean by that is like all of them.
You're not gonna like this, but Helbrecht coming back and trying to crusade against Relics and Guilliman, that would probably bring all of them together. Other than that, Ghazghkull could probably do it if he started like in a giant Wog invasion and literally was like storming towards Terra. I could see all the Black Templars anyways heading that direction.
He kind of already is starting a huge, massive Wa.
Yeah, but he hasn't picked the direction of which way he's going yet. I still hope he's going after Angron. It's just my own silent plea of just like, come on, you can do it. Kill the Red Angel.
Somebody to kill somebody that's supposedly just going to annihilate everything.
Another thing it would be is if, I mean, this isn't really talked about much, but as we know, anyways, the Lion is on the Nihilist side of the Imperium, and Guilliman is on the Astronomicon side. If the Lion decided, anyways, that he didn't think that Guilliman was doing a good enough job, and he actually put everybody together on the Nihilist side as a second Imperium, I could see the Black Templars gathering together, anyways, to stop that. Okay. Mind you, anyways, I don't think that's going to happen. I'm just saying that if it did, or if Alfarius did the same thing. That's one of my all-time favorite, anyways. Hoping, anyways, for lore is that Alfarius actually starts the second Imperium in the Imperium Nihilus. He gets the Lion to join with him, which to me, anyways, would be awesome. Watch.
Would make that even better if it actually ran because it's done by the ruling systems of Alfarius and Omegon. It would actually work better.
Well, remember, there's only one of them left. So
that we know of. It could be a lot.
Anyways, between Guilliman and Alfarius, and Guilliman going, so you've created your own Imperium, I see, on the other side of the Great Rift. No, it's actually a democracy in Helbrecht. Heresy!
No, you see, it's not heresy where we are. It's heresy where you are.
You are.
You are on that side. We're on this side.
Technically, we're not even really a democracy. We're more of a republic. But we're definitely not an Imperium.
And we are actually more organized than you.
I'll say it again. Heresy! Like I said, that would definitely, I think, anyways, band them together. And like I said, anytime that I think Terra, anyways, that someone would be going after Terra with like a massive army, that would get all the Black Templars together. But yeah, it would almost have to be almost like a last ball protocol concept. That would also get them together, I think, too. If the Imperial Fist pushed the button and he pushed the button for the last ball protocol, yeah, I think that would get them all together. But other than that, I'm not really seeing anything. I think one of the benefits of the Black Templars having so many Space Marines is the fact that they are so spread out on all sorts of different crusades.
Yeah.
And trying to pull all those different crusades back into one place, really, really hard. But what do you think?
Well, I think other than what you mentioned, possibly the Tyranids. That's true. I think of pretty much any force at this point. Because if all the Tyranids grabbed to one place.
Oh, Tyranids. I thought you said Terra. So like another, like the hive mind showing up.
Yeah.
Or another massive hive fleet is even larger anyways than Kraken. It seems like every time that we get a new hive fleet, the new hive fleet that shows up is like twice the size of the last one. So
well, there have been a lot of smaller ones that have been sprinkled in. It's just that they aren't as big or bigger than
I'm talking about anyways, at least the last three like major ones. I mean, it was
that's my point. Is
Leviathan,
the major ones.
What was it? Leviathan, Behemoth, and then Kraken was the last one, right?
Or
was Leviathan
was the second one, I think, or the third one.
Well, regardless,
anyway.
I just remember Behemoth probably had the coolest color scheme of all of them. It was the black and red guys. They looked like ants. They looked more bug-like. But yeah, okay. Yeah, I wasn't even thinking about that. Yeah, the Tyranids, yeah, I think that would definitely pull them all together too. Especially if you had a hive fleet come in anyways, it was significantly larger than anything they'd ever seen before. So yeah, like you said, anyways, an external alien threat, definitely can see that. Well, first off, anyways, thank you, Sir Bender Byton, for being a member and suggesting the Black Templar. And Arky, anyways, was super stoked about that. But on that note, we are actually out of time for today. Now, join us next week for our very special bonus on Bilko's Brigade.
Fantastic. But if you enjoyed our little show, could you please be so kind as to push that subscribe, like, or follow button? And if you wish to help us expand our work on 40k lore, by all means, support us by joining our membership program on our YouTube channel, Tales of Asharaka.
Yes, and remember, if you become a member, you can tell us what you want us to talk about for a whole month. Not only that, but at the end of this, there is going to be a trailer for Bilko's Brigade. Please enjoy. But most importantly, have a great day. And until next time, this is Ektar.
And Yuxin.
Signing off.
Where are your brothers in arms now? On your shoulders you